My name is Hannah Dawson, just your average retired grandmother. After a lifetime of hard work, I managed to scrape together a modest pension. When my only daughter, Amy, got married, all I could think about was how to support her a little more. After all, I'm a mother. Flesh and blood doesn't turn a blind eye. No matter how hard things get, watching your own child struggle is a kind of pain no parent takes lightly. From the year they tied the knot, I started helping them out financially and rarely stopped. Amy and her husband live in Boston, where everything costs a fortune. Rent, commuting bills, you name it. Their income barely covers the basics. So I stepped in where I could. Then came the baby, and with Mason's arrival came formula, diapers, daycare. The expenses never ended. I didn't wait for them to ask. I offered to send them $5,000 each month. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was something, enough to keep Mason fed and their household running a little smoother. Time flew by. Before I knew it, Mason was old enough for school. That $5,000 wire transfer had become the most routine line item in my budget. My old friends would tease me now and then, saying, "Hannah, you're too good a mom. Sending money every month like that. Aren't you worried Todd's getting too used to the handouts?" I'd just laugh it off, always repeating the same thing. What's the point of keeping score? They're my family. As long as they're living well, I'm happy. Some people called me selfless. But I never thought of it that way. I just did what I believed a mother ought to do. Looking back now, maybe I was just being naive. Maybe in their eyes I'd been reduced to nothing more than a walking ATM. Christmas was around the corner and the days were getting colder. But my heart felt warm. I had made up my mind early on. I was going to spend the holidays at Amy's this year. I wanted to be with them. I wanted us to be a family. I started preparing for the holiday dinner 2 weeks in advance. I picked out a cozy dinosaur sweater for Mason. He was going to love it. For Amy, I finally got her that cashmere scarf she'd been eyeing for months. Warm and elegant, just like her. As for Todd, well, he's a coffee guy, so I had a friend in Oregon send me some specialty roasted beans. I even packed up a tin of homemade cookies and a small bottle of my signature bourbon, made back in my old hometown. By the time I zipped up the luggage, the 2 big bags were practically bursting. I hummed to myself while packing, picturing it all in my head. Our little family gathered around the table, the turkey sizzling in the oven, Mason tearing into his presents in the living room, Todd cracking jokes with me, Amy bustling around the kitchen. Just the thought of it was enough to melt away the winter chill. That 3-bedroom townhouse had been theirs since the year they got married. They were nowhere near the down payment back then, so I emptied nearly all of my savings and even borrowed some from my brother Robert to help them buy the place. I remember the day they got the keys. Amy threw her arms around me, eyes brimming with tears. "Mom, thank you. From now on, this is your home too. You come anytime you want. That south-facing bedroom? It's always yours." Todd was right beside her. He didn't say much, but he kept nodding. "Amy's right, Mom. You're welcome anytime." I held on to those words like a warm ember, believing I'd raised a good daughter and lucked into a decent son-in-law. I still lived in my own little place, but every now and then when I visited for a few days, they were always polite and welcoming. I never imagined that this picture I painted for myself, this comforting illusion of mother-daughter closeness, could shatter so quickly. 3 days before I was supposed to leave, I stood in front of the mirror, trying on a new outfit I'd bought just for the holiday. My phone rang. It was Amy. "Mom." Her voice sounded hesitant, nothing like her usual breezy tone. "Amy, what's wrong?" My heart sank. A quiet dread crept in. "Oh, it's nothing major," she said casually. "Just wondering, did you already book your ticket?" She made small talk, her voice floating like she was skimming the surface of something she didn't want to say. I could hear it, the weight behind her words, the pause between lines. That warmth I'd been feeling just moments ago dimmed. Like a small cloud rising from my chest, blocking out the sunlight I'd built up in my heart. "Yeah, everything's ready. Just waiting to head out." "Why? Is something going on?" There was a pause on her end and then she said quietly, "Todd wants to talk to you for a minute." "I'm giving him the phone." Before I could respond, the call was already handed off. Todd's voice came through as polite as ever, maybe even a little more gentle than usual. But underneath that calm tone I could hear it. A coldness, a deliberate distance. "Hi there, Hannah." "Hi, Todd." My fingers gripped the phone tighter. "So, he paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. "This Christmas, it might not be the best time for you to come." It hit like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. Sharp, soaking, merciless. My throat dried up. It took me a moment to find the strength to respond. What? Did something happen? No, nothing serious, he replied, his tone light like he was discussing the weather. It's just, my parents are coming over this year too. They're getting older, light sleepers, kinda set in their ways. They each need their own room and well, with only 3 bedrooms, one for my dad, one for my mom and one for Amy, Mason and me, there just isn't space. My ears rang. My mind struggled to catch up. His parents each get a room? What about me? The mother who handed over her life savings to help with that down payment? The woman who's been wiring over $5,000 every month like clockwork? I blurted out the first thing I could think of. I can sleep on the couch. Really? I don't mind. It's the holidays. I'd be fine even with a blanket on the floor. I was still clinging to hope. Surely they wouldn't be so heartless as to turn away a grandmother on Christmas. Surely not. There was a pause, several seconds long. Todd hadn't expected me to be so accommodating. When he spoke again, the irritation was just barely hidden behind his measured tone. Hannah, you really don't need to put yourself through that. The house is going to be a mess with everyone around, the living room full of people and noise. It wouldn't be comfortable for you. And Amy and I, were already pretty stressed from work. We were kind of hoping to just relax over the holidays. Have a bit of, private time. Private time. Those words pierced like a shard of ice. Was that what my $5,000 a month paid for? A share in the common areas, with no room for the person footing part of the bill? He kept going, his voice light as if he were doing me a favor. Maybe you could stay home this year. Or visit Robert. His place is close and it's always lively over there. It sounded considerate on the surface. But underneath it was just another way of saying, don't come. You'd only be in the way. My heart plummeted inch by inch. Shock, hurt, disbelief, they all hit at once, choking the breath from my lungs. I fought to steady my voice. Todd, let me talk to Amy. I want to hear it from her. There was a rustle on the other end, Todd passing the phone over. Mom. Amy's voice was barely a whisper, soft and trembling. She sounded like she was either crying or desperately trying not to. Mom, please don't be upset. Todd didn't mean anything bad, it's just, his parents aren't in the best health and they really need good rest. So maybe you could just... Her words stumbled over each other, trailing off into a silence that said more than any sentence could. And in the background I heard it clearly, Todd clearing his throat. A small sound but unmistakable. A cue. A warning. She never said the words don't come, but she didn't have to. The truth was laid bare. She wouldn't even stand up for me. Not even to say I could take the couch. She'd picked her side and it wasn't mine. All right. I understand. I managed to keep my voice calm, used every ounce of willpower I had to hold on to my dignity. Then I hung up. The moment the dial tone echoed in my ear, the silence wrapped around me like a void. And just like that, the world went cold. I sat frozen on the couch like a puppet whose strings had been cut. My eyes locked onto the 2 suitcases in the corner, packed days ago, standing quietly beside the neatly wrapped holiday gifts I'd prepared for the family. Boxes wrapped in bright reds and greens, ribbons curled just so. But now those cheerful packages just looked mocking. Like they were laughing at me. Todd's voice echoed again and again in my ears. My parents are coming. Each of them needs their own room. Each of them. Their own room. The words looped in my head like a broken record and I couldn't stop the memories from flooding in. I remembered when they first got married, the 2 of them crammed into a shabby rental, old, drafty and barely livable. In the winter the walls froze over. In the summer the ceiling fan clattered like it might fall at any second. I couldn't stand to see them living like that. So I dipped deep into the retirement savings I'd spent my entire life building. That still wasn't enough, so I went around borrowing from friends and family. Somehow I scraped together what they needed for the down payment on that 3-bedroom townhouse. I spent days running around handling the paperwork, aching from head to toe, but my heart was warm. I thought I was helping my daughter build a home of her own. Then came the pregnancy. Amy's morning sickness was so bad she couldn't keep anything down. I moved in to take care of her, cooked whatever she could tolerate, walked with her when she couldn't sleep, massaged her aching back. After Mason was born, the sleepless nights began. Whenever he cried through the night, I was the one pacing the living room in circles, rocking him in my arms so the young couple could get a little rest. And through all these years without fail my phone would buzz at the beginning of every month. A message from the bank. $5,000 wired straight into Amy's account. Not a penny more, not a penny less. Even when I was struggling, cutting corners on my own meals, I never missed a month. I've given everything I had, money, time, energy, and I never once complained. Never asked for anything in return. Isn't that enough? Isn't that what a mother is supposed to do? And now what I get in return is a carefully worded dismissal. There just aren't enough rooms. As if I were an uninvited guest. As if all I've given could be brushed aside with one polite excuse and a locked door. The more I thought about it, the more it didn't sit right. Todd's parents. Since when did they suddenly become so frail? When did they need quiet rest in their own private rooms? I remembered very clearly. Last Thanksgiving they were gallivanting across Florida with a tour group, eating street food, lounging on the beach, grinning into the camera for picture after picture. Their social media was full of sunny photos and breezy captions. They looked healthy, happy, and nowhere near in need of rest. This excuse wasn't just flimsy, it was insulting. So flimsy, in fact, that it wasn't even trying to be believable. It wasn't about logistics anymore. It was a clear message: you're not welcome here. And then, like a snake slithering quietly into my thoughts, a dark realization began to take shape. What if they never planned on having me come at all? The moment that thought landed, it rippled through me like a stone dropped into still water, sending wave after wave crashing through my chest. Shame, hurt, rage. A burning sense of betrayal that tightened around my ribs until I could barely breathe. But I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't going to be cast aside like some worn-out burden, sent off with a fake smile and a half-truth. I needed to know the truth. All of it. I barely slept that night. Tossed and turned until the sky outside began to pale. My eyes were ringed in shadows, my head throbbed like a war drum, but oddly enough, my mind had never felt sharper. At dawn I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I paused at a name I barely recognized, Lily Green, Todd's niece. We'd only met once during a holiday gathering, exchanged pleasantries and added each other out of courtesy. We'd hardly spoken since. I hesitated, then opened the message thread and typed as casually as I could. Hey Lily, do you know what Todd's parents are doing for Christmas this year? I was thinking if they aren't going to Todd's, maybe I could invite them over here. My thumb hovered over the send button for a moment, then tapped. I sat frozen, gripping the phone, palms slick with sweat. Half an hour later, Lily replied, cheerfully unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. Hi Hannah. What a coincidence. My aunt and uncle already made plans to spend Christmas at Todd's. They're really excited, the whole family's getting together. They even booked a trip to Hawaii after the holidays. Boom. It was like a firework went off in my head. Only it didn't light up the sky, it incinerated the last shred of doubt I had. So that's it. Lies. All of it. From start to finish, Todd had lied to me. The not enough rooms, the elderly parents needing rest, pure fiction. The truth was simple, he just didn't want me there. I was a bother. A burden. Something to be managed, hidden, excluded. And I, like a fool, had offered to sleep on the couch. I was ready to settle for the damn floor if it meant being near my family. But they wouldn't even spare me a corner. Todd. What a performance. Give that man an Oscar and a standing ovation. His delivery was flawless. Too bad his script was garbage. I was shaking with fury, humiliation burning through me like wildfire. I had to breathe deep just to keep my hands from trembling. But I wasn't going to sit in silence. Not this time. I grabbed my phone again and dialed Amy's number. No more guessing. No more waiting. I needed answers and I was going to get them. The phone rang for a long time before Todd finally picked up. His tone was clipped, already impatient. He didn't even bother to pretend anymore. Yeah. Hannah. What now? I bit back the fire in my throat and spoke, my voice sharp and frosted over. Todd, let's cut the crap. Tell me the truth. Do your parents really need a room to themselves for health reasons? Or are you all just heading to Hawaii after Christmas? There was a beat of silence. Then his voice came back, angry and tight. Oh, for God's sake, Hannah. Who's been feeding you nonsense? Who told you that? He didn't deny it. He just panicked about where the leak was. And that was all the answer I needed. You don't need to know where I heard it, I said coolly, voice as steady as a blade. Just answer me. Yes or no. He went quiet again. But this time he didn't try to cover it up. And then the mask came off. His voice dropped, hard and dismissive, coated in disdain. So what if it's true? Christmas is for our family. My parents are rarely in town. Do we really need you there making things complicated? Honestly, Hannah, don't you think? Maybe you're just a little extra. That word landed like a slap across the face. I was trembling, hands clenched, breath caught somewhere between rage and heartbreak. Extra. I repeated, voice cracking with disbelief. Todd, I helped raise your child. I put down the money so you could buy that damn house. I send you $5,000 every month. And I'm the extra one. Hannah, don't twist my words, he snapped, now openly hostile. Amy's my wife. We have our own family now. It's time for you to stop inserting yourself into things that aren't your business. Stop inserting myself. My mind exploded. So that's what this was to him, inserting myself. My monthly $5,000 transfer? Just the price of admission to be tolerated. And even then I'd overstayed my welcome. Was this some kind of twisted job where I paid them to be allowed to show up? Where I had to earn my place with money and silence and never ever inconvenience the real family? I suddenly saw everything with perfect clarity. The fury hit me like a bolt of lightning. Years of swallowed pride, of unspoken hurt, of bending over backwards for the sake of peace. All of it erupted like a volcano. Todd, don't you feel even the slightest bit ashamed? My voice trembled, but it roared with a fire I hadn't felt in years. Who paid the down payment for that house you're living in so comfortably? When you had no money, who emptied her retirement savings and begged around just to help you? When Amy was pregnant, sick and exhausted, who was there every day, cooking, walking her to appointments, rubbing her back through the nausea? When Mason was a newborn, screaming through the night, who carried him in circles for hours so the two of you could sleep? You say I interfere? If I hadn't interfered, you wouldn't have any of this. There was a pause, and then a low, bitter laugh came through the line, cutting into me like a blade of ice. Hannah, he said, voice frosted over with contempt. What's the point of digging up the past? You gave us the money because you wanted to. Nobody twisted your arm. We didn't ask for it. If you chose to give, then don't come back now acting like we owe you something. He didn't even flinch. He just kept going, his voice rising with self-righteousness, like he was the one being wronged. And all that money you send to Amy every month? That's your call. If you want to help your daughter, help her. But don't act like that buys you a seat at our table. That's not how it works. Don't try to use money to manipulate us. He paused again, then delivered his final blow like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. My parents worked hard their whole lives to raise me. The least I can do is make sure they're comfortable when they visit. It's called being a good son, Hannah. It's my responsibility. Voluntary. Unrelated. A son's duty. Listen to that. Listen to how neat and tidy he's made it sound. Every sacrifice I made, every dollar I gave, every sleepless night, reduced to nothing more than a personal choice. Scrubbed clean of meaning, brushed off like lint on a sleeve. My support, my presence was never invited. Never welcomed. It was simply endured, and now not even that. He calls it natural to take care of his parents, but the woman who helped build his life from the ground up? She's a burden. A nuisance. Wanted. The hypocrisy was staggering. The entitlement blinding. I was shaking, physically shaking, not from lack of words but from the sheer weight of humiliation. His indifference crawled across my skin like 1,000 tiny ants, leaving behind nothing but ache. And in that awful, paralyzing silence, it finally hit me. There was no point in arguing. People like Todd don't change because you plead or reason with them. They don't listen. They don't reflect. They take. And then they tell you it was your choice to give. He had never thanked me, not once. Because in his mind, I hadn't given him anything worth gratitude. I had only done what I was supposed to do. And now that he no longer needed me, I was being filed away like a receipt from a purchase long forgotten. I inhaled deeply, forcing the tears back. Arguing with him wouldn't bring me any peace. If anything, it would only strip me further of what little dignity I had left. The real question wasn't Todd. It never had been. The question was Amy. My daughter. What did she believe? Where did she stand in all this? And why, when I needed her the most, was she silent? After hanging up on Todd, I stared at Amy's contact name on my screen for a long time. My finger hovered, trembling slightly, then finally tapped to open a new message. I took a deep breath, forcing my tone to stay calm, steady, even though inside I was shattered. I didn't want to be the one to tear apart whatever thread of mother-daughter bond we still had left. Amy, I just spoke with Todd. My heart really hurts. I know life hasn't been easy for you too, and I've never wanted to be a burden. But what I can't understand is, why couldn't anyone just tell me the truth? I'm not unreasonable. I just want you to be honest with me for once. I just want to know, what do I mean to you? What am I to you really? I hit send. Then I waited. The house was painfully quiet. So quiet I could hear every tick of the wall clock, every shallow breath I took. My heart pounded loud in my ears. The minutes crawled by one after another. The screen stayed dark. I waited so long I almost convinced myself she wasn't going to respond at all. And then finally my phone buzzed. Amy had replied. Just a few lines. But they cut like a dull blade, sawing slowly across my chest, inch by inch, peeling away the last scraps of hope I had left. Mom, please don't be upset. Todd was a little blunt, I know, but he didn't mean to hurt you. He's just trying to make things easier for his parents. It's not often they get to visit. Things have been really hard lately. The mortgage, the car payments, Mason's school, it's all piling up. The pressure is a lot. Please don't make this harder for me. Just stay home and enjoy the holiday, okay? I'll come visit you after the new year, I promise. The same familiar tone. The same evasive sorrow. She didn't deny what happened, but she didn't own up to it either. No, Mom, I'm sorry. No, you didn't deserve that. Just vague guilt wrapped in soft excuses. A passive attempt to smooth things over while leaving the real wounds untouched. She didn't stand up for me. She didn't defend me. She didn't even acknowledge how badly I'd been hurt. Instead, she cast herself in the middle, caught between loyalties, weighed down by pressure, as if she were the victim and I was the one making it harder. But she forgot something. The person pushed aside, the one lied to, the one left standing in the cold with a heart full of love and 2 suitcases packed with gifts, was me. Her mother. The woman who had carried her through every hardship. I stared at the screen, my fingers curling slowly around the phone as a cold, heavy stillness settled deep in my chest. It was like something inside me finally broke. Quietly but completely. That's enough. I couldn't rely on her anymore. I couldn't even expect a basic defense, a word of fairness, a flicker of courage. She was like a doll made of cotton now, soft, spineless, shifting with the wind. Todd spoke and she obeyed. Todd decided and she followed. She couldn't even muster the will to fight for a place on the couch for her mother. I had poured everything into her. And I got nothing back. Just emptiness. This must be what they mean when they say there is no grief greater than the death of hope. Because this was it. I turned off my phone without a word and walked to the window. Outside, the sky hung low and gray. The wind whipped through the bare branches, sending brittle leaves spinning through the air. They drifted down one by one, landing on the sill on the porch and, somehow, right onto my heart, cold and weightless but heavy all the same. So be it. This Christmas I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay right here in this quiet, empty old house. Alone. And maybe, that was just fine. Right then and there I made a decision. This month's $5,000 transfer? I wasn't sending it. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But because finally I understood. There's simply no point. I'd given them everything. My love. My labor. My money. My time. And what I got in return were lies, indifference, and a look in their eyes that said I was nothing but a burden. What exactly was I still paying for? I didn't text them. I didn't give any warning. I said nothing. When the usual bank notification popped up, your monthly transfer is scheduled, I didn't move a finger. I simply swiped it away. No drama. No anger. Just a hollow quiet that echoed through my bones. A tired, aching sort of sadness that went all the way down. Had our relationship really come down to this? Had it shriveled into a single monthly transaction? All those years I believed talking about money ruined relationships. Now I see the truth. Sometimes even if you never talk about money, the relationship was never real to begin with. And that's fine. Let this 5,000 be the test. Let's see what really matters to them. Their mother, or her money. Day by day Christmas drew closer. The neighbors had started hanging holly wreaths on their doors, soft white string lights glowing under the eaves. You could smell cinnamon and baked apples in the air, mixed with the chatter of people hauling home turkeys and bottles of wine. The whole neighborhood felt wrapped in warmth, like a picture-perfect postcard of the holidays. But inside me there was nothing but emptiness. Like an old wooden house hollowed out and filled with cold wind. I hadn't reached out to Amy since the call with Todd. And neither of them had contacted me either. It was as if that entire conversation, the lies, the rejection, had been neatly swept under the rug, buried under the glitter of holiday cheer. Then came the 5th day after what had once been my routine transfer date. And my phone rang. Amy. Her name flashed across the screen like a knock at a door I wasn't sure I wanted to answer. For a moment I just stared at it, feeling something dull and heavy sink in my chest. But I answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice was careful, almost tiptoeing, laced with a sweetness that felt a little too deliberate. How have you been feeling? It's gotten colder lately. Make sure you're bundling up, okay? I'm fine. My reply was calm, distant. No warmth. No anger. Just flat. That's good, she said, then hesitated, clearly stalling. So, it's Christmas today. Do you have any plans? Maybe I could come over and we could have dinner together. I let out a quiet laugh, but only in my mind. Now she wanted to know how I'd be spending the holiday? Where was this energy weeks ago? No need, I said smoothly. I'll be at Robert's for dinner. A harmless lie. One that spared us both the discomfort of the truth. She went quiet for a beat, then began drifting through small talk, asking if I'd picked up any new hobbies lately, whether the little coffee shop downstairs was still open, if the big oak on the corner had shed all its leaves yet. Circling. Waiting. Biding her time. I knew exactly what this was. She wasn't here for coffee or trees. She was waiting for the right moment. And then, just like clockwork, her tone shifted. Subtle, casual, pretending it was nothing. Oh, by the way, Mom, did you forget to send this month's money? There it was. I'd been waiting for that line. I paused just long enough to let the silence stretch. Then, as if I'd only just remembered, I replied, Oh, you mean that money? Yes, she said quickly, her voice brightening, relieved. I took my time. Let the silence hang a moment longer. I didn't forget. The quiet on her end was instant. Still and sharp. I could almost hear her face freeze. I continued, slow and measured, every word a shard of ice. I was just thinking, with the holidays and everything, you probably have a lot of expenses. And with your in-laws around, I'm sure they're helping out a bit too. So really, you probably don't need my 5,000. I let that sink in, then added, my voice colder now, deliberate. And you were right, I'm just the outsider now. Always interfering in your little family. Doesn't feel right, does it? So I've decided. No more money from my side. I'm done. Silence. A silence so deep I could hear it breathing. I didn't need to see her face to know what it looked like. Stunned, scrambling, the kind of disbelief that only hits when a line you assumed would always be there suddenly vanishes. Funny thing about forgetting. It's contagious. They forgot everything I gave. My help, my money, my love. So I forgot to pay. Not out of revenge. This wasn't revenge. This was me finally learning how to deal with them. The way they taught me. After a long silence, Amy's voice finally broke through, thin, trembling, and laced with both hurt and blame. Mom. How could you do this? How could you just stop the transfer like that? Her voice climbed, rising into a shrill, frantic pitch, almost hysterical. Do you have any idea what we're dealing with this month? The mortgage, Mason's tuition, all the bills. We're drowning. And now you suddenly cut us off? How are we supposed to manage? And just like that, whatever last ember of tenderness I had left for her, flickering and fragile, went cold. She remembered the mortgage. She remembered the expenses. She remembered how hard things were for her. But she forgot. She forgot who emptied a lifetime of retirement savings to help them buy that house. She forgot who walked circles in the dark with a screaming baby so they could sleep. She forgot the $5,000 I sent every single month like clockwork, rain or shine. They remembered everything, except me. And in that moment I finally saw it clearly. Some relationships don't end with one blow-up. They don't shatter with one loud argument. They rot slowly, piece by piece, through neglect, through silence, through the quiet violence of being pushed away again and again. I didn't change. They let go of me long ago. Before I could even respond, another voice exploded from the other end, Todd's, loud and boiling over with rage. Hannah. What the hell is this supposed to mean? He was yelling now, completely unhinged. You're using money to manipulate us, is that it? Amy is my wife and you're supposed to help her. Now you just cut us off. What, to make her suffer with me? So there was Todd unraveling. The same man who not long ago told me to stop interfering, now screaming down the phone because the checks stopped coming. Funny. That independence he bragged about sure didn't last long without my money. I held the phone steady and let out a soft, bitter laugh. Manipulate you? I echoed, voice cool and dry. How exactly am I manipulating you? I gave you that money because I wanted to. And now I don't. Isn't that the freedom you've always wanted? I paused for effect, then added, smooth as glass and sharp as ice. Besides, you're such a good son to your parents, right? Since they're staying with you for the holidays, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help with the bills. After all, you keep saying this is your home now. Wouldn't want to burden outsiders like me with it anymore. Silence. And then Todd lost it completely. You, Hannah Dawson. Don't you dare act like you're some damn martyr. That down payment you gave us? My parents paid for the renovations. You think you're some kind of savior. His words came fast and venomous now, one after another, getting uglier by the second. You just wanted to control us. And now you're cutting us off so we'll come crawling back. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen. We don't need your filthy money. You hear me? He was shouting now, no longer in control, spitting fury and slurs down the line like bullets. If you think. Enough, Todd. Please, just stop. Amy's voice cut in, choked with tears, trying to calm him, but it was useless. He was off the rails, spiraling deeper into his tantrum, completely oblivious to the damage he was doing. I said nothing. I didn't hang up. I just listened. I listened as if I were watching a stranger's life unravel through a crack in the wall. His words were ugly, brutal. Like knives. But strangely, they didn't pierce anymore. Because I couldn't feel them. I had gone numb. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had drained me of all sensation. I felt like I was floating outside of myself, watching from a distance as a sad, ridiculous scene played out. A grown man screaming into a phone, a woman crying in the background, and an old woman, me, finally realizing that some endings aren't made of fire and fury. They're made of silence, clarity, and a door that quietly closes behind you. The more Todd raged, the clearer everything became. His barrage of insults, so loud, so crude, were like a rusted, dull blade. And yet somehow they cut through the last tether I'd been clinging to. The final thread of hope I had left for this family, for Amy, for the fantasy of some sacred, unshakable mother-daughter bond. For so long I'd been afraid of confrontation. Afraid of awkward silences. Afraid that saying too much might damage the relationship. But now, after being dragged face first through the dirt by the very people I once would have walked through fire for, I realized something. Once the facade shatters, it's easier to breathe. At least I didn't have to keep acting in the farce anymore. Pretending we were the picture of a loving, grateful family. That I was the gentle mother and they were the loyal children. Todd's voice finally began to fade. All that yelling had left him winded. The only sound left on the line his heavy, angry breathing. I waited a moment before I spoke, calm, steady, and cold as still water. You done? Silence. Like he didn't expect me to sound so quiet. I let out a soft sigh, not tired, just done. Todd, you told me something earlier. You said you and Amy are an independent little family, and I shouldn't interfere. So fine. I'm respecting that. Starting now, I won't interfere ever again. I paused. Let it land. Since you think I've been using money to control you, let me make it simple. There will be no more money. I won't give you a single cent. No misunderstandings, no conditions. From this point forward, I'm stepping out of your lives. Entirely. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even falter. And maybe that's why the words cut deeper, because they weren't said in anger. They came from something colder, stronger. Final. I added one last thing, my voice as even as ever. Don't worry. You won't get another call from me. I won't be bothering your little family again. Finally, Amy's voice slipped through, panicked and trembling. Mom, please don't say that. Todd didn't mean it, he's just upset. He didn't mean any of it. I let out a soft, sad laugh. Sweetheart, I don't care what he meant. What matters is what he said. And more importantly, you heard every word and you didn't stop him. She froze. I could hear it. The guilt rising in her throat. Her voice cracked, small and pitiful. Mom, it's been really hard. I know it's hard, Amy, I said gently. But it's hard for me too. You've been so busy feeling sorry for yourself, stuck in the middle. You never stop to think what it's like to be completely alone on Christmas. Sitting in a quiet house with 2 unopened suitcases and nobody coming home. You always understood. You just never stood up. Not once did you say, Mom, please stay. Silence again. The kind that says everything. I glanced out the window. The sky had darkened. On the corner, a few houses had turned on their lights, tiny warm glows against the winter dusk. The glass reflected my face back at me, calm, unfamiliar, awake. All right, I said finally, quiet but firm. Enjoy your holiday. Don't call again. I'm fine. Really. You don't need to worry about me. And with that I hung up. I powered down the phone and set it face down on the table. And for the first time in a very, very long while, I felt nothing but peace. The days that followed were quiet. Outside, the world spun toward Christmas. Neighbors wrapped their porches in twinkling lights. Laughter echoed down the block as kids zipped across snowy sidewalks on skateboards, and front doors bloomed with holly wreaths, golden stars, and bright red ribbons. But my home stayed still. I didn't hang a wreath. I didn't string up lights. Instead, I scribbled 3 simple words on the welcome mat by the door. Let the snow fall. There were 2 knocks at my door that week. The first was from Jane, the elderly woman across the hall. She came bearing a tin of her homemade spice cookies, her usual warmth radiating even through the wood between us. She chattered on through the door about her daughter flying in from out of state, her grandson coming along, the whole family gathering around the fireplace to sing old carols. I listened, leaning quietly against the doorframe, hearing her footsteps fade down the hallway without ever opening it. It wasn't that I didn't want to see her. I just didn't have it in me, to pretend, to smile, to make small talk. Later that evening, I pulled open the storage closet and began sorting through boxes that hadn't been touched in years. Inside were the things I'd kept but tried not to think about. Amy's wedding invitation, still pressed in its envelope. A finger-painted card from Mason, smudged with glitter. And a worn-out teddy bear, half its fur rubbed off. I crouched there, slowly sifting through it all. When my fingers brushed against a photo, I froze. It was a family portrait, taken 6 winters ago in their living room. Mason had just been born. I was wearing an apron, hair pulled back in a rush, cheeks flushed from the kitchen heat. I was holding him, sound asleep in my arms, his face pink with warmth and safety. At the time I thought that was happiness. That this kitchen, this noise, this family, was the future I had helped build. I didn't throw the photo away. I slid it back into the bottom of the box and closed the lid. Not discarded, just sealed. Days passed. No call from Amy. I knew she was waiting for me to cave first. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care. But because I finally understood. Caring isn't the same as surrendering. I'd carried their world on my back for years. Helped them build their little family, only to be told I didn't belong in it. Gave them money, time, dignity, and all they saw was someone meddling. Well then, let them see what life looks like without the person they found so inconvenient. I'd heard through the grapevine what was happening. Todd's temper had always been volatile. He'd already cycled through 3 jobs in the past few years. Every one of them ending with him blaming company politics, instead of taking any accountability. He insisted Amy stay home, said he could provide. But reality told a different story. Their mortgage had fallen behind. 2 months past due. They sold the car, replaced it with a clunky older model with a cracked dashboard. And when Todd slammed the door hard enough to shake the building, the neighbors thought it was domestic violence and called the police. I found this out while holding a coffee mug. The edge of the cup hit the counter and chipped. I stood still staring at it. Then I picked up the broken piece and dropped it into the trash. Maybe a little pain is what it takes, I murmured. That week I started rebuilding. Slowly, practically. Up at 6. A tidy kitchen. 1 mug of black coffee with toast. Then I'd write down 3 simple tasks for the day. Do the laundry. Repair the worn quilt in the hall. Test a new recipe for pear and clove shortbread. And I replied to Julia's email. She had asked if I might be willing to teach a sewing class at the community center. Once a week. I'd love to help, I wrote. When we spoke on the phone, she sounded thrilled. It means so much, Hannah. Everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to teach anymore. I smiled. It's what I know best. If it's useful to someone, I'd be happy to share it. Oh, we need you, she said. You have no idea how much. And somehow that did something to me, something small but real. It warmed the part of me I thought had frozen over for good. Because maybe I wasn't useless. Maybe I was needed. Just not by them. That night, I pulled out the scarf Amy had left at my house. One I'd knitted for her 2 winters ago, stitch by stitch. The yarn had dulled with time, the edges frayed and loosening. I sat on the couch with a crochet hook in hand, slowly mending it. And as my fingers moved, so did my thoughts. Quietly, involuntarily. Was she staying warm enough? Did Mason have enough to wear? Was Todd still angry? I hadn't sent money in weeks, but that didn't mean I'd stopped caring. I just stopped equating care with obligation. I was finally learning that love didn't have to come at the cost of self-erasure. I tidied up the guest room. Put fresh flannel sheets on the bed. Laid out the electric blanket. I even set a small box of strawberry cookies, her favorite, on the nightstand. Not because I was hoping she'd come back. But because if, one day, the weight of it all became too much, if she had nowhere left to go, I wanted her to know. A light was still on here. Not for weakness, but for peace. I didn't reach out. And she didn't call. We lived in silence for nearly a month. No missed calls. No knocks on the door. I started to believe this was it. The end. That our bond had cracked too deeply to be restored. That mother-daughter love, once broken like old furniture, simply couldn't be fixed. But then one Friday evening something unexpected happened. I had just come in from the balcony, arms full of dry laundry when the doorbell rang. Urgent. I dried my hands and walked to the door. Peered through the peephole. She was standing there. Worn-out canvas bag in one hand. An old puffer jacket zipped to the chin. Her face pale, her eyes hollow, like she'd been standing there for a long time, building the courage to ring. We stared at each other through the door for a long moment. Then her lips parted, hesitant, soft. Mom, can I come in? I opened the door. She stood just past the threshold, looking more like a lost child than a grown woman with a family. I stepped aside. No welcome. No, can I get you something to drink? She came in slowly, didn't take off her coat. Her eyes were rimmed red, and there was a weariness clinging to her that hadn't been there before. Mom, her voice was hoarse, trembling with something she couldn't name. I can't do it anymore. Thought I could. But I can't. She didn't cry. She just stood there, head bowed, fingers nervously rubbing the strap of her bag like she was trying to find words buried somewhere inside her. At home, she swallowed. Todd lost his job. For real this time. No severance. The credit cards are maxed out. Mortgage is overdue again, and this time, we really can't cover it. I said nothing. No gasp. No shock. I had expected this long before she did. That day you didn't answer the phone. I knew you were really done with me. Her voice dropped even lower. After that, I tried to call again, but I couldn't. I couldn't face it. No. I just don't know who else to talk to. She cleared her throat like swallowing glass. I'm not here to ask for money. I know you're tired of me. I don't know where else to go. I didn't know who else would listen. I didn't rush to respond. Instead, I eased down onto the sofa and tucked the half-mended yarn into its basket. Looked at her with the kind of quiet only time and hurt can shape. Then gently, sweetheart, if you've got something to say, come sit down. We have time. She hesitated. Then walked over and sat at the far edge of the couch, like a defendant awaiting a verdict. She looked so small. So unsure. So very far from the girl I'd once held in my arms. But she was here. And for now, that was enough. The house was so quiet, I could hear the soft scratch of her fingernail brushing against the fabric of the couch. Then in a voice barely above a whisper she said, Mom, I divorced Todd. When? I asked. Last week. She hesitated. He threw a plate, shattered it right on the floor. Said, you and your mother, you're both useless. Then he slammed a divorce agreement on the table. She took a shaky breath, then continued. Honestly, it started the day you stopped sending money. He spiraled. Said you turned your back on us. That the only thing your family contributed to our marriage was a down payment. Everything else, the renovations, came from his parents. Like that made them saints. Her voice cracked with something sharp and bitter. But I remember, Mom. I remember who held my hand during every doctor's visit, who was there when I gave birth. It was you. You're the one who paced the floors all night with Mason. You're the one who cooked and cleaned and carried me when I could barely stand. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice trembled. I knew all of that. I was so scared of rocking the boat. I thought if I kept quiet, if I avoided the fight, maybe the marriage would hold. I nodded. She wiped her nose with the cuff of her sleeve and said, Todd started staying out all night. Got angrier by the day. The night Mason had a fever, I called him begging for help. You know what he said? Your kid, your problem. She looked down, eyes welling again. I couldn't take it anymore. I really tried, Mom. I did. And then the tears came. Not soft, not silent, but jagged and raw. Shame, fear, guilt, all crashing down at once. Mom, I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't defend you. I didn't say a word. And I know now, you weren't mad at me. You were hurt. I'm a mom now too, she added, voice thick. And I finally get it. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there watching her unravel. Then I stood up and walked into the kitchen. When I came back, I handed her a glass of water. Here, I said gently. Drink a little. Let yourself breathe. She took it, her hands trembling as the glass touched her lips. I wasn't angry, I told her, sitting back down. I was tired. Tired in a way I didn't know how to explain. She looked up at me, eyes full of regret, tears falling freely now. You used to say, Mom's your safety net, I said softly. But somewhere along the way, that net stopped being a comfort and started feeling like a cash machine. No one asked if I was okay. They just asked if I was still giving. Each word was quiet but deliberate. And it landed. I let you in tonight because you're my daughter. That doesn't change. Not ever. She nodded hard, wiping her cheeks. But the hurt you caused me, it's not something that vanishes overnight. I met her eyes. We'll need time. We'll have to rebuild. She nodded again, this time sobbing, but with something different behind the tears. A kind of understanding. A kind of release. Mom, I don't want you to keep living like that, tired and alone. I'll figure things out. I'll get a job. I won't lean on you like before. And then she reached for me. Collapsed into my arms and clung to me like she used to when she was little, when a nightmare or a skinned knee was the worst thing in the world. Mom, I love you. I was so scared I couldn't hold it all together. I wrapped my arms around her. Gently, I stroked her back and whispered, It's okay to fall apart sometimes. But you can't spend your life making someone else your crutch. You understand? She nodded against my shoulder, tight and silent. I didn't say anything more. I let her cry. Then slowly I stood and went back to the kitchen. I pulled down the honey jar, set the kettle on the stove, and started making her a warm drink. Outside, the wind howled, whipping through bare branches. But inside there was finally a flicker of warmth again. A light that hadn't been lit in a long, long time. Amy stayed at my place for 3 days. Not moved back in, just staying temporarily. That's how she phrased it, and I didn't argue. She didn't bring much. Just a small crossbody bag, barely packed, not even a full change of clothes. I laid out clean pajamas and found an old scarf I'd knitted for her years ago. The one she used to love as a child. She dismissed it later, said the color was ugly, and stuffed it in a drawer. I never threw it away. The first night she didn't say much. She ate quietly, eyes fixed on her plate. She didn't even mention Mason. After dinner, I brewed a pot of tea and added an extra spoonful of honey to her cup. She sat curled into the corner of the couch, cradling the mug like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Mom, she murmured, thank you for letting me come back. I looked at her face, thinner than I remembered, shadows under her eyes. I nodded. I'm your mother, not your landlord, I said. Sweetheart, you don't have to tiptoe around me. Her eyes reddened again and she ducked her head, taking a sip of tea to hide her tears. I didn't say anything else, not out of anger, but because I knew the moment I softened too quickly, she might slip right back into the person who only knew how to lean. And I wasn't that woman anymore. The mother who would break herself in half just to keep her daughter standing. I had my own life now. After everything, I'd started volunteering at the community center. Once a week, I helped Julia lead a sewing class. A group of eager young women would gather around me, asking about stitch techniques and how to give new life to worn fabrics. The way they looked at me with curiosity, with respect. It was like sunlight warming my spine after a long, bitter winter. It reminded me that I didn't have to give endlessly to prove my worth. I didn't have to be anyone's savior to be valuable. Amy spent her days out job hunting, returning in the evenings quiet and worn. She didn't nag me for money like before. Didn't rummage through my pantry saying, "Why do you never eat anything nice, Mom?" Now she asked things like, "Mom, are you feeling okay? Are you getting enough rest?" And hearing that, it meant more to me than I expected. One night she came home late. Didn't even take off her shoes, just sank down by the door and let out a long sigh. "How'd it go?" I asked. She shook her head. "Sent out 7 or 8 resumes. 2 places got back to me, scheduled interviews. But they both said there's a lot of competition. I have to wait." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I've never looked for a job on my own before. It was always you then, Todd. I don't really know how to do anything." I didn't try to soothe her. "It's about time," I said. "You're still young. It's okay to start from scratch." She nodded slowly. "I tried applying at a convenience store. The manager asked if I had cashier experience and I didn't even know how to answer. I always thought I was a decent wife, a good mom. But without Todd or you, I couldn't even figure out the register." She laughed bitterly, but it caught in her throat. "Mom, I know you look down on the way I used to live. I don't want to go back to that either." I handed her a glass of water. "It's enough that you know now." She took a sip, but her eyes darted up nervously. Do you not want me to stay?" I met her gaze. "It's not that I don't want you here," I said evenly. "But we need to be clear. This isn't a place to hide from the world. And I'm not here to carry your life on my back again." She looked down. "I understand. I'm not going to give you much help this time. But I'm not turning you away either. You can stay here for a little while. Long enough to catch your breath and figure out your next move. But the decisions, they're yours now." She bit her lip. "What about Mason? He's with Todd?" I asked. She nodded, her voice dropping. "Todd's mom offered to keep him for a few days, but I don't trust her." I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I knew it wouldn't be long before that child ended up back here. Todd could barely handle himself, let alone a 6-year-old boy. "Focus on getting your footing," I said calmly. "You're not the only one responsible for that child. But you do need to be someone he can rely on. Someone who stands tall." She sat there for a long while, quiet, absorbing it all. Then she nodded, barely audible. "Okay." I could see it now, not just the regret but the shift. A change that couldn't come from pleading or promises. A change that had to be earned one step at a time. And this time I wasn't going to rush in with an umbrella and hold it over her head. I'd stay nearby. But I'd wait to see if she'd learn how to stand in the rain. Wednesday morning, before the sun was even up, the doorbell rang. I was tying on my apron when I opened the door, and there stood Todd, looking irritated, Mason slumped in his arms. "He's got a fever," he said flatly. "You two figure it out." Before I could react, he shoved the child into my arms and turned to leave. "Mason." I looked down. His face was flushed deep pink, his little nose raw and red, his thin jacket barely clinging to him, 2 frozen lines of mucus crusted beneath his nostrils. I brought him inside and called for Amy. The moment she saw him, her entire body buckled. "Payson," she cried, rushing forward. She grabbed him from my arms, frantically peeling off his clothes with trembling hands. "What happened? What happened to you?" she sobbed, wiping his face, her voice cracking. "How could your dad how could he?" She couldn't even finish. Her words dissolved into tears. I didn't try to comfort her. I just went to the kitchen. Boiled water. Found the fever patches. Pulled out the children's medicine I always kept on hand just in case. Mason lay limply in her arms, eyes barely open. "Mama," he whimpered, "I'm so cold." Amy wept silently, rocking him. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. Don't be scared, Mommy's here." Once he'd had medicine, once he was tucked in and sleeping under 2 blankets, the house fell quiet again. Amy sat on the couch, tears still fresh on her cheeks, staring off into space like someone who'd aged a decade overnight. "What's your plan?" I asked. She was silent for a long time. "I just want to find something stable," she whispered. "I can't think about anything big right now. I just want to take care of Mason. It's going to be hard, I said, watching her closely. You'll be working during the day, taking care of him at night. No one's going to carry that load for you. Are you ready for that? She nodded. But this time there was something different in her eyes. Not panic. Not desperation. Responsibility. You can stay here a while longer, I said. But Mason, he's your job. I'll help a little during the day, but that doesn't mean I'm your full-time nanny. I have my own life now. She hesitated, then nodded again. I won't treat you like my babysitter anymore. Sounded almost like a joke, but I knew she meant it. Change doesn't happen overnight. She'd spent years relying on someone else to catch her. Learning to stand on her own would take more than good intentions. That afternoon she came home from a job interview and sank wordlessly into a chair. I was prepping dinner when I heard her in the living room on the phone, her voice rising. I'm not trying to default. I just didn't have the funds this week. You can't freeze my account like that. I need money for my kids' medicine. Hello. The call cut off. She crouched beside the sofa, wrapped her arms around her head and stayed like that for a long time. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't care. But because this was her reality now, hers to face, hers to fix. I couldn't keep rescuing her. I wouldn't let her pull me down while trying to stay afloat herself. At dinner she barely spoke. I didn't press her. After we cleared the table she stood next to me drying dishes, quiet, pensive. Then out of nowhere she asked, Mom, was I always this selfish? She paused. Then added, Did you want to cut ties with me for a long time? I looked at her. It's not that I wanted to draw a line, I said. It's that I had to. She froze, plate in hand. Love isn't a paycheck you're entitled to. It's not automatic. It's something we give each other through respect, through boundaries. It's not just about needing something and expecting the other person to deliver it. Her eyes brimmed again. I dried my hands and stepped closer. Amy, this is your second chance. You'll make mistakes. You'll fall down. But you can't keep expecting others to clean it up. One day when you finally stand tall, you'll look back and be grateful I didn't keep spoiling you. Grateful that I finally stopped catching you every time. She bit her lip, then nodded. Mom, thank you for still taking me in. I gave a faint smile. I didn't take you in. I'm just getting to know you again. She laughed through her tears and I couldn't help but smile too. And in that moment I felt it. The space between us, once full of resentment, silence and hurt, had shifted. Not erased, but softened. We weren't going back to what we used to be. We were beginning something new. A relationship no longer built on imbalance but mutual growth. Mutual respect. I set a bowl of warm soup in front of her and said, Eat. You've got another interview tomorrow. Can't negotiate on an empty stomach. She wiped her face, still smiling. Hey Mom. I will. And this time I believed her. The morning Mason's fever finally broke. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and spilled across his cheeks. He opened his eyes, blinked at me and smiled. Good morning, Grandma, he whispered, his voice still scratchy, but his eyes clear and bright as if nothing had happened at all. I reached out and touched his forehead. The heat was gone. Just a soft, gentle warmth remained. Finally, peace. In the kitchen, Amy was making congee. Her movements were still a bit clumsy, but better than they'd been days before. She stirred the pot with one hand, phone in the other, quietly reading instructions aloud. Soak the rice for 30 minutes. Don't add the salt too early. I sipped my tea from the living room and listened to her muttering, didn't interrupt, didn't correct. Because real change doesn't come through tearful apologies. It comes through mornings like this, lived one after another when no one's looking. Not long after Mason got better, Amy landed a job. Front desk at a used furniture store. Not glamorous, not high-paying, but steady. Her boss was a woman in her 50s, sharp-edged and quiet but fair. She reminds me of you, Amy told me that night. Doesn't talk much. But she gets things done. I just nodded. Over dinner she looked up suddenly. Mom, she said, can I stay here a little longer? I smiled. If you want to stay, I'm glad to have you. She blinked, startled by how easy it came. Then she nodded, eyes glistening with quiet relief. We didn't say much after that. But that meal, quiet, simple, felt more like a reunion than any holiday dinner we'd ever had. The days that followed flowed like water. I kept teaching at the community center. I read books, cooked meals, tended to my balcony garden. Sometimes I'd take Mason to the local library. He'd gravitated toward puzzles and drawing lately. Every time he finished a picture, he'd come running, breathless with pride. "Grandma, look. I drew you." I'd tape his wobbly little sketches of me to the fridge. They made me laugh every time. Amy stopped saying "I'm sorry" so often. Instead, she began to say, "Thank you." And maybe that's what family should really sound like. Not a cycle of guilt and forgiveness, but mutual care. Mutual presence. Two adults trying to live decent lives side by side. One afternoon, I got a call from an old friend. She asked if I was thinking of moving back to my hometown, said the neighbors were organizing a get-together and wanted to see me. I paused, then gently declined. I didn't want to go back to the place where everyone only knew me as that good mother. Because I'm no longer a woman defined by being anyone's mother. That night, I was out on the balcony repotting some plants. My fingers were covered in soil, dirt packed under my nails. The wind tugged at my collar and I wrapped my cardigan tighter. When I looked up, Amy was standing in the kitchen doorway watching me. "Mom," she said quietly, "if you ever want to travel or go somewhere, I could come with you." I looked at her, smiled. "If I want to go somewhere," I said, "I'll go on my own." She nodded. Didn't push. Didn't argue. He understood. He accepted it. Not because I loved her any less, but because I finally understood what love truly means. To love someone doesn't mean giving yourself away. It means being able to say, "I want a life of my own too." 2 months later, she told me she was moving out. I didn't try to stop her. I just asked, "Are you sure this time? Have you really thought it through?" She nodded. "Mom," she said, "do you remember the house Todd and I used to live in?" I gave her a faint smile. "Of course. I gave up my share of it. Let Todd carry the mortgage on his own. If he wants to stay, let him. As for me, I rented a little apartment near Mason's school. We'll live there from now on. And you're always welcome to visit." I nodded. Didn't ask for details. Yes, I paid for that house. But that's old business now. Digging it up would only reopen wounds that had finally started to close. Sometimes the real reckoning isn't chasing down what you're owed. Seeing the debt for what it is, seeing the debtor for who they are, and walking away for good. I walked her and Mason to the door. Watched them disappear around the corner. I gave a small wave. And in that moment there were no tears. No sadness. I simply closed the door, turned back toward the kitchen and brewed myself a pot of tea. The living room returned to stillness. Not empty, just quiet. Because this time the silence wasn't loneliness. It was space I'd finally claimed for myself. Looking back now, I see it clearly. This whole journey was never about breaking free with a dramatic exit. It was about gently untying every tight, tangled knot life had looped around me. Not ripping. Not raging. Just releasing. Releasing the control. Releasing the guilt. Releasing the automatic impulse to please, to rescue, to surrender my boundaries in the name of being a good mother. I don't want love that keeps score. And I won't spend what's left of my life trading peace for obligation. I know she'll face struggles again. And yes, she may come back someday needing help. If I can help, I will. And if I can't, I'll say no with clarity, not guilt. Because now I finally understand. I'm not an A-team. Not a live-in nanny. Not someone's second chance on demand. I'm me. A woman who stands in her own feet. And in this life I have left, the first person I choose to love is myself.